We've got a wide range of everybody
We
today, some
do.
solo, some with one part-time, some with a bigger team. So we will take this and kind of adapt, and feel free to pop in any questions as we go along. If there's something that you have a specific question or query about when it comes to the size of team you have.
Yes. Yeah, great mix here. So before we dive in, especially if you are new here, welcome to our Keeper Q&A. This is a free thing that we put on every single month, third Wednesday of the month at the same time. So hopefully we'll see you back again next month as well. Today's deep dive is all about customizing Keeper and simplifying that task list. Before we dive in case you haven't been here before or you're not sure who we are Erica Hughes and Jody Strong. We started this business to fill a gap that we saw in the industry with helping people to create those systems and processes. It's kind of where we nerd out. We absolutely love it. And we know that the majority of people don't. So we are happy to take that off of your plate and help. Everybody's business is different. Everybody's goals are different. So we specialize in helping you figure out what's going to work best for you and your team. One key thing that you will hear us say over and over again is that there's no one right way to do things. There's no one way to do it. We give you lots of options, share with you the experiences that we have seen across a multitude of teams that we've worked with, firms that we've worked with, and we help give you some ideas and guide you to help you get to the solution that's going to work best for you. So we meet you where you are and then help you alongside your journey. We do not work for Keeper. We are just huge advocates of the system because we just love it so much. Another big disclaimer we will always stand behind is that all of the things that we offer to you, inspiration only. We are never going to say you should do these things. All of the things that we provide to you are opportunities, are options. So they're things that you could do. And we just ask you to please be gentle with yourselves and don't put undue pressure on yourself to make it a certain way that you see. We want to help you make it the way that's going to work best for you.
Alrighty, with that, how we usually run these Q&As is we'll do a bit of a deep dive. So today we're going to talk about, like Jody mentioned, how to streamline and simplify that task list here inside of Keeper. And then after we get through some slides talking about some ideas that we've seen within the community, then we will open it up to any and all questions. So this does not have to be specific to what we're talking about. After we get done with that deep dive, it is free reign. So if you have a new feature that you just haven't gotten a chance to dive into, if you have an issue that you're running into that you just want somebody to be able to bounce off of, or if you have specific questions about how other people in the community are using Keeper or structuring their team inside of Keeper, anything like that, we're all open ears from there. A really big piece of ourselves coming into this call too is don't let us go too fast. If you are newer to Keeper and we say something and we get rolling because we're excited and you're like, wait, I didn't even know this was a thing. Stop the bus. Feel free, pop it in the chat. Let us know what questions you have as we're going through, and we'll absolutely stop, back it up, help fill in the gaps. We just want to make sure we're not steamrolling anybody who's brand new or who may not have had exposure to that. So feel free to add any questions in the chat as we go through this deep dive and start getting into the rest of the questions. Jody and I will bounce back and forth and make sure everything in the chat is addressed before we leave today. So that being said, we are talking about simplifying and streamlining your task list, but a little bit of framing around this. We've seen teams, I mean, even in this call, who have a wide variety of numbers of team members on their team. And a lot of the demos that you'll see, or even in our demo, you'll see individual tasks for each and every piece. Right. And that makes a lot of sense because each piece can go to a different team member and have a different due date. But if you're working solo, or if you have a small team that's trying to expand, having that month-end task list that is just oodles and oodles of tasks per client can get really, really overwhelming. So we've heard more and more people coming to us with smaller teams or teams that are growing and just trying to restructure themselves that are like, hold on, I've put everything in Keeper and now my task list is so overwhelming that I don't look at Keeper. So that's what we're going to be talking about today is some of the most common ways that we've seen teams get a little bit creative of how they structure their tasks or how they simplify them down. So that's our deep dive for today. So let's get rolling with some examples. So this is one of the biggest pieces that we recommend when it comes to Keeper is removing any of the reports that you don't use. So inside of, we'll go through a couple of examples to give you a visual here in a second, but inside of that transaction review section or inside of the pay and see or even the financial statements, there are defaults that come within Keeper. And that's awesome. I think all of us would love to get to a point where we review all of that and we know that everything's ticked off for the month. But realistically, that doesn't always happen. And the reports that we aren't able to get to, especially in like the quarter end or the year end closes, are the ones that end up stacking up and making our overdue task list just a giant and a big monster in the closet that we don't even want to touch or look at. So, one of the easiest ways to make sure that your overdue task list isn't getting outrageous is just looking at and being really honest with yourself in this season of business. What do I actually look at? What's a little bit more idealistic? And I'd love to look at it, but I'm just not there yet. The reports here inside of Keeper are a really easy section where you can remove what you don't need and what you're not quite able to get to every month, and easy to add them back when you have more space, when you hire, when that structure makes a little bit more sense and you are able to add a couple other bits and pieces. So let's walk through a couple of those examples just to help you understand how to remove and what sections we're talking about.
Absolutely. So removing them is quite simple. You're going to click on that task name or that task bar. And right where you see where you can assign a due date, assign a user, delete report's going to come up there. Just go ahead and hit that button because you can, when you're ready, add it back in. To add them back in at the very bottom of that section, you're going to see that add report button. And when you click on that, you can add the keeper task, which is going to bring up any of those options that you have taken away. They'll be there ready and for you to add right back in. So here are some examples of what this looks like and how reducing that can help reduce that overwhelm and knock down those overdue tasks or just help you fine tune exactly what it is that you need to see. So your transaction review, all the basic reports that come with it, maybe you don't do half of these, go ahead and hide them, which is really what you're doing is you're hiding them by removing them, by deleting them there. And you're simplified. You've got a lot less on your plate here, and it can be faster to move through. Same idea for those financial statements. Not all firms use all of these reports all the time. So again, by clicking that delete report button, essentially what you're doing is you're just hiding it away, but you can always add it back in if and when you need to utilize that report. So you can.
This is also, oh, go ahead, Jody. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say this is a really interesting thing as well because where we've seen teams go back and forth is looking at previous closes. So if close over close, you're not getting to half of these and they just stay unchecked, go ahead and remove it. You can always add it back again once we get through busy season or you're able to hire more help or anything like that. And this is also client by client. So we don't have to remove
Mm-hmm.
all of them from every client. If we have a higher volume client where all of these reports make sense and we need them, leave it. But if you have a smaller client that is not as high touch, doesn't have as much complexity, go ahead and remove what you don't need on that client to create space for those clients that are higher volume that need more attention and more of these keeper reports to help you keep everything straight.
Absolutely. Another
So,
idea that you can do is create a custom section within your close that is one task per closing section. So you'll see here pre-close tasks, count reconciliations, transaction reviews. Each one of these is a section within the close. So instead of assigning every task in that section to somebody, if it's the same person doing all of it, you could create one task for them, one due date, one assignee for that. And now on their big task list, they have one instead of 10. So it's one way to kind of simplify and bring it all down together. And then when you're in that closing section, you leave those blank. So this is a out of the box idea that we have started seeing gain traction. And a lot of people are starting to utilize this to help simplify their list so that they just have that one, because a lot of these, you're going to be working on them all at the same time anyway. So this is a really great way to kind of reduce the task list to just what you need, but still be able to hit all of these points as well.
And this is a really interesting creative workaround because this really stacks up when you have more than one client that you're working on, right? So then you have transactions without payees 3 or 4 times for your 3 or 4 clients, and all of the accounts that are going to stack up, and that can get unwieldy in itself as just a client that has 20 accounts. So that can take up your whole first page of your task list for the day. So we've seen more and more people shifting to something like this because it gives you one task per client per section, right? So you're not missing anything. You can still have the due dates, you still have the assignee, and then you have the visibility of being able to see what's been checked off in that section, but gives you a little bit of kind of the best of both worlds where you don't have to have every task on your task list, and can use that section and check it off as a bit of a expansion on that without having it overloading you on Monday before you've had your coffee.
Right. Another idea for simplifying those lists and combining. So this is taking a look at some examples for pulling bank statements. So previously we might have had one task per statement that we needed to pull. So easy to look at, okay, my pre-close, I have 3 tasks. That means I have 3 statements I need to get. A way to reduce that is to combine it all into one task. So now we have one task that says download all my bank statements. And we utilize the checklist and subtasks to determine how many do I need to get. So here's the how-to for that. And then below we have that list. So we have the same accounts listed, and we can utilize that fraction up here to say, okay, I've gotten 0 out of my 3 statements. I know that I still need to gather them. So at a quick glance, you can look at this task and know how many statements you still need to go after. Click on it to open it to figure out which ones it is that you need to go for. But this way you're taking 3 and moving it into merging them all together into one.
Yeah. And one thing to note here, one piece that can become a little bit tricky just with any of this that we're simplifying and condensing down into a single task and utilizing checklists. Within Keeper right now, we can only have one due date per task, right? So we
And
can't have
assignee.
different yes, exactly. One assignee and one due date. So what we've seen is if a team is doing the second option that just has one task for gathering statements for this client, and they all fall a little bit differently, and you have that one straggling statement that never comes out until after the 10th or something like that, then go ahead and set your due date for that last statement. That way you can kind of catch it and make sure you're not going in and getting kind of backwards on that. So just be careful with your due dates if you are going to simplify and streamline. And that may be one of those things that you need to get a little bit creative with and see how you want to process that. So just keep that in mind when we are simplifying and condensing.
Yes. Same type of example or similar here is a quality control. Instead of having each quality control area separated, you can separate those by checklist. So instead of having separate tasks, now you have one task that is all encompassing of the QC review that you're going to do. And then the checklists are how you break that down. So instead of a keeper task, it's now the keeper review checklist here. Same thing for the DEX and for QBO. So it's a way, again, to condense it down. to help minimize the length and how uh, overarching your task list can get.
Another piece that we've seen that can kind of go behind the scenes here inside of Keeper is utilizing those priority stars. So if you hover over any task, then you'll see that little star icon show up, and then you can click on that star to mark it as a high priority. Now, what this really indicates is, especially as you're going through, this allows us to filter our task list down and show us, hey, if it's a crazy day, I'm not going to get to everything. Let's at least prioritize those with the stars on it or that are marked high priority. This can also really help if you have a subcontractor or something like that on your team as well, to help them prioritize when inevitably month end close, there's going to be more tasks. So if we can help streamline and filter down and pass down either for ourselves or for somebody else on the team, hey, do or die, these are the things that must get done
Mm.
today on the due date, then it helps kind of filter down or at least let you know what can be pushed and be flexible and what is more rigid that does need to get done. So this is built into closing and non-closing tasks.
Yes.
So that's why these are really helpful, because within the non-closing tasks, we could do a tag that says high priority or urgent or must do or something like that. We don't have the same flexibility to use those tags in the closing sections. So using priority stars is something that we can do across all sections in Keeper, which makes it a really helpful tool.
Mhm. And when you are utilizing that priority star, underneath your task list, you can create a filter. You can create a saved view for that. So there is a quick filter button at the top for high priority. You can click that and it's going to show you only those that are just top of the line, like I've got to get these things done. And then of course you can click to save view and save that so that it's one of your regular things that you're checking day by day. To make sure you've got all of those high priority tasks in view.
Additionally, so I've seen teams do either one. So again, there's no right or wrong answer. Some teams will do high priority task list, work through those, and then work through whatever else is due today or due this week, right? So you could have separate views. If you look at the actually, that is the I was gonna say you could filter and, use the sorting and sort all of those high priority, but I was looking at the wrong section. So, I think that that's probably the best way to do that, is to do that priority list, start your day there, work through all of those, and then filter through to any others that are due today or due this week.
All right. So now we're going to be opening it up for questions. So feel free to ask questions about what we've just talked about. Um, or if you don't have any questions about our deep dive topic today, you are welcome to ask any question about Keeper, and we'll open up our demo account while questions are coming in.
And it actually looks like there's quite a few people that have started shifting to using that custom closing section. So I think that's really awesome. That's one that I've seen. I actually saw it on Christina Springstead's workflow topic that she did with Keeper. And I think it's been spreading like wildfire. So I'm glad to see that a lot of you are starting to utilize that as well. It comes really in handy. Oh, beautiful. Amanda actually mentioned that there is a community template that helps summarize that month end close task that does have that custom section. So great to know. Thanks for letting us all know, Amanda. That's awesome.
Just a minute.
And Jody, whenever you get logged in, we do have a question from Heather about managing 1099s in Keeper.
Okay. Is there specific or just in general?
It looks like a
Ah,
more general question, but Heather, if you're able to, feel free to either write in the chat or come off of mute to make sure we got exactly what you need.
So my clients actually, they send me the 1099 because they say, okay, we have a new freelancer. I work with a bunch of different service companies, so they hire freelancers based on what service they need for that particular their customer. So they send me the 1099, and I'm struggling with a way to organize it in Keeper. So what I've been doing is just adding it to QuickBooks, but then it doesn't seem to always match up with Keeper, and I'm not sure if there's a better system to figure out how to make sure that you're on top of that. So come at the end of the year, I don't have to worry about where they all are.
Right.
So just to clarify a little bit, Heather, I appreciate that context. So it sounds
Mhm.
like as soon as they do business with a new vendor, they're sending that W-9 to you. So they haven't necessarily hit that threshold
Right.
for the 1099 necessarily, but we're starting to try to organize some of that pieces. So I have you right there?
Yes. Yeah. No.
Okay.
I taught my clients that no matter who it is, no matter if you think they're going to hit
Yeah.
rate threshold or not, before we send out a payment, we need that 1099. That we need that that 1099.
The
So
W-9. Yeah.
W9. So that,
Great question. Okay. I think I would recommend utilizing this newly added vendors report.
Okay.
Because this is going to show you anybody who has been added. Now you can also expand this and it will just show you essentially, you go back far enough, it might show you every vendor that's in there. But this has a similar setup as the prepare 1099s. So you can check off whether you have that W-9 on file or not. You can
Yeah.
also add that W-9 here.
Mm-hmm.
And then from here, you can upload it to QBO. So that way it can go back and forth. Now,
Okay.
if you do have somebody who
If
comes,
you're not, I guess my other question is if that vendor is not in QuickBooks yet, because I'm the one that's adding them and doing that, can I do that from there?
can you add a new vendor from here?
Yes. So that I could just put it all in there with add the 1099, add the W-9.
I do not think so. I think the vendor has to be added in QBO and then you can update it from Keeper.
And keeper. Okay.
Yeah, that's we'll double check and let you know if that is incorrect or if that's changed. Last time we knew there is a bit of an API or like a back end cutoff where you can't Keeper doesn't even have the ability to create something like a new vendor. So we'll double check, make sure that's absolutely correct and send you a message if that's not. But
Mhm.
last we knew you can't add a new vendor from Keeper, but once you've added that new vendor, you could connect the W-9.
I
The
have done
only,
for the
okay.
W-9s when, but I can't get them to just automatically send me the name and the email address saying, hey, we've hired a new contractor. Can you get this information? They do it for me, which is nice, but
Yeah. Another thing you can do, Heather, is you can share their unique W-9 request link
oh,
and have direct them to direct all of their new vendors to fill this out. If they do that, then the W-9s will come directly to your vendor request inbox here.
oh, okay.
And this would be something I'd have to test because it's been a while since I went through that back way to come in here. I think if it comes through and it's like unknown, you have to match it. You might be able to add the vendor name there. But again, that would be something I'd have to test again to double check.
Yeah.
But anybody can use the W-9 link that's here. So if you give that to your client and encourage them to send that to their vendors,
Yeah.
then it'll automatically come to you.
Oh, that's perfect.
And you
Okay.
can check the box so that it automatically notifies the client as well. But yeah, that would be a streamlined way for them not to have to be the middle person and send it to you. They can have the vendor send it directly to you.
Great. Thanks.
And how I got there, I was in vendor requests,
Mhm.
click add request,
Okay.
and then W-9 request, and there's your link.
All right. Thanks.
Okay, Erica, what else we've got today?
Yeah, amazing. So moving right along, Jennifer Short has a question about, do you have any suggestions for how to filter the task list to only show tasks that are dependent on another task being completed. So let me skim and make sure I've got full context here. Oh, okay. So this is one of the really interesting pieces inside of Keeper is that we don't have dependencies, right? So
Right.
in other systems, we can say, once this is done, then do this. So it can be kind of difficult to navigate the due date if it depends on the task before. So especially when there's like a delay on that first task, it can get a little bit
Right.
complicated. So Jennifer has a suggestion, or she was thinking about adding new statuses for those tasks, but it feels a little bit clunky and wanted to kind of troubleshoot with us and see if there was any workarounds that you had, Jody.
So task statuses is definitely an option because then you can have saved views set up for each of those statuses. Um, like we have one in here, I think that's ready for review that I could have saved. So each day I know I've got to check to see if there's any that are ready for me to continue with or process. So yes, this is an option. I do agree that it probably will feel clunky. Because the only other thing I can think of is how you have your dates, your due dates. So if something's due on Monday, something else is due on Wednesday, then you can have, filter or sort by your due date. Those are automatically going to be stacked. But again, that's going to get pretty tricky and it'll have more training. I think maybe starting out with statuses may be a good area to try first. The only other thing would
Yeah.
be you could do tags maybe. If it's non-closing, you could do tags because there's only one tag per task. So once that task is ready to be moved on, you could add a different tag. I don't know. It'd be some trial and error here for sure. We'll look up the feature requests for the dependencies because I know that's something that is out there that we're wanting as a whole. But yeah, maybe the status is to start.
Yeah, I would say the other thought that I had is kind of echoing what Jody said, that there are some you could be able to, again, if it's a non-closing task, you could add a tag that just says dependent on or something like that so that you
Mhm.
could pull up and know just those tasks. Alternatively, you could add a task status that says delayed or waiting on previous task or something like that. So again, unfortunately, I don't think we have a really perfect workaround for that one, but I will make sure that when we send out the recording on Friday, I'll get that canny request for dependencies because that is one that will make a
Yeah.
lot of things easier, both in templates, in our clients, and stuff like that. So that's our quick workaround. In the meantime, not perfect. So I'll make sure to get you guys the feature request.
The only other thing I can think of is being very clear in how you have your tasks set up. So whether it's a note in the description that says that this is don't do this task until this other one is complete, or as part of a checklist underneath it to say when this task is complete, mark the next one that's dependent upon that one. So mark it as ready, or something like that. So being very clear about which ones have to be completed first uh, can also help to make sure that things aren't being skipped.
There was also a really good suggestion in the chat, just so everybody saw it as well, of being able to use like a unique emoji for some of those tasks that are dependent. So maybe like a red stop sign or a caution symbol or something like that, so that you could have, I mean, you can even filter and search your tasks in here by that emoji and create a list just of those. Or when that task comes up and has that emoji, then you're able to just do a quick double check and make sure the task before has been completed. So
Yeah.
a couple of ideas here in the chat as well.
Mhm.
Great question. All right, moving right along, Jody. So Angela has a question about simplifying the account reconciliation. So right now, if we have a checklist for how to reconcile the accounts and we apply that template, that same checklist goes into each and every account, which can sometimes create a lot of clutter. So especially if that client
Yes.
has upwards of more than
Yes.
5 and kind of really gets big. So let's talk about some creative ways that we've seen kind of manage this.
Yeah, absolutely. So one simple way to do it would be to take all of these checklists and create a task. So maybe it's above in your pre-close section. And you've got a task that says reconciliation, um, reconcile accounts. And here's where you put all of your checklists. So that way, this is a reference task essentially for how to complete everything in this section. So that is one way that I have seen it done. So in other words, you're kind of creating an SOP placeholder here. I've seen other people create like they just have their SOP in an outside document. So maybe that's linked somewhere else, maybe in the client details section as a reference for how to do it. If there is something that is very specific, it's like this has to get done this specific way. Part of this is going to be training yourself, training your team on where to look for that information to make sure that it doesn't get overlooked or skipped. But things like this, the reconciliation in QBO, you could move that up to a different task. And maybe here you just say reference that task for the how-to. Maybe you only have a certain number of instructions here just to remind them of how to use that report. So that's the first thing that pops to my mind for how to simplify this and reduce it.
Yeah, and especially if we have the context of using that custom closing section that we talked about before that has kind of
Yes.
the overview in it, that may be a really good workaround so that you could put the major SOP in there and then for each account have a quick bullet point or reference back to it or something like that. Now, a couple others that I have seen floating around, that's kind of my biggest suggestion. That way it's still on the same page and we're not having to navigate too far. But again, like Jody mentioned, you could always have that in another doc and link the doc specifically because that's going to be a shorter checklist item. Additionally, I have seen some teams do an instructions section at the very top that
Mm-hmm.
has all of their SOPs or a firm task section that has SOPs specifically on how to reconcile accounts or how to balance these or something like that. So there's at least a couple of options just to kind of roll around, Angela.
Yep.
All right, moving right along. Jesse has a question about what resources do you suggest we send to clients to introduce them to Keeper and all the functions that they have available? Are there any pre-existing links? Do you record a Loom? What does that look like?
Yeah, great question. So in Keeper, underneath your templates, there's an emails tab, and there are some built in here for introducing your clients to Keeper, introducing them to the client portal, both existing clients as well as new clients. So flip through your email templates here. I just pulled this up for somebody the other day, and I meant to update it here, but I didn't. There is a generic Keeper resource. It's through their help pages, or in their help pages, that kind of walks people through the portal and what it is. And then they have a recorded video in there as well. Again, it's generic of how to use the portal. So to start, you could use their resources and plug them in as an option for your clients to review and get familiar with it. We have heard quite a few people who will record their own. So that way it's coming from you and your firm, and you can walk them through how you want them to utilize the thing. So there's a lot of people who like to do that recorded video. It's not required, of course, these are just recommendations. If you do choose to go down that route and record something for your client, if you come into their portal settings, so this is specific to this client, and I've got my client contacts in here, I can utilize this preview area, click on that eye, and I can see, or I can show them a preview of their portal that's exactly like what they're going to see. So you can record from here as well, or have it open in a Zoom meeting with them. Just pop it open and say, this is what it looks like. Here's where everything is. And you can help walk them through that. So having that preview, knowing where that is and utilizing that can also help. Even if you're just taking screenshots of that and sending it to your clients as well.
And Jesse, I did go ahead and throw that help article in
Thank you.
the thread underneath your comment so that you can reference that. I just to echo, I think the most common that we've seen is adjusting that invite or welcome email so that there is some structure in there. And then popping open a preview can be really, really massively helpful, whether that's just something you shoot as a general and you
Mhm.
attach it there in that welcome email, or on your kickoff call or on your first advising call or something like that, being able to kind of walk them through using this preview icon can go a long, long way. So that's kind of top suggestions there. Let us know if you have additional questions on that though. Righty. So moving right along, Kate has a question on internal notes and collaboration during a monthly close process. So, is there a way to carry forward the notes or collaboration discussion from a previous month to next month's task? Um, so that's the
No.
bulk question. Jody, do you have any suggestions on that one?
So what we're talking about here, everyone, is the chat feature that you have on each of these tasks. Now, when you create a new close, all of this resets. So they all show up blank, as if there wasn't a conversation, because it's a new task. Same thing with your non-closing tasks here. If you have a comment, this is a reoccurring task. Once this is checked off, all of those comments go with that task, with that occurrence of that task. So there's not currently a feature to be able to bring those with the task. They don't stick, to be able to carry them forward or copy them over. There's not a way that is built in right now. There is a way to see them. So if you're in the client, you can come up to comments and you can click on all. Now this is going to get cumbersome because it's going to go through the entire history for this client of comments and conversations that have gone back and forth. But from here, you would be able to see what close it was in, and be able to click on that to open it without having to change what close page you're on. So the history is here, and you can search. So if there was something where you knew that you wanted it to have the user review previous closes. So let me see what example we can use. Let's say it's a transaction review. You put a note in your checklist somewhere for any of these. You could put a note in the checklist, or if it's a non-closing task, you could add a note to your description that says review previous chats or something like that. So now you have the indicator here that says, hey, I'm flagging you. I want you to go review historical information. And you know what that historical information is going to be attached to. So I could then copy my task, come up to my chats, click on all and search for that, or search a keyword or something like that to see, okay, where's the history? And that way you can filter that down to just what you need to see. Hopefully that's helpful and answers your question. There's no current way to inherently pull those forward. But having
Yeah.
access to all of it here and that search feature hopefully will help to be
Yeah,
able to find that information faster.
exactly. So just to provide a little bit of context for like, why wouldn't Keeper pull this over? This is actually created in a way so that when you move to the next close, you're not bringing last close's baggage or the thread about needing to pull this statement or something like that. So it is designed to help give you that refresh for the next month, but that can make it a little bit tricky if you do want to go back to last month's comments or closes. So I think comments is a really good idea, and being able to search in there. Now, one thing that my brain pulls up is actually being able to use the notes section. So,
Mhm.
Jody, if you go up to the info card at the very, very top, and go to notes, then this is an area where we can either keep call notes or previous month close notes or something like that. So my brain almost wonders if creating a note that's just called month end notes or something like that. And you could make this note as expansive as you want to, and either create an individual for each close that could stack up. So personally, I would just do this and add a month or maybe at the top or the bottom and just kind of keep a running log. That way it would be really easy. You wouldn't have to go search through multiple pieces. You just go back to this note, add the next month, add any notes or details, and then you have one document essentially that's here inside of Keeper that you can scroll back through. Now, the one thing I will make sure to emphasize, this is not an area of Keeper that auto saves. So if you, especially if you and a team member are working in this area, please save yourself the headache that we have run into plenty of times. Make sure to hit save here so you don't overwrite each other. But that's one way that if the comments are getting cumbersome in trying to search that, you may just create like a little document here in the notes section that keeps a running log of any notable pieces that you may want to go back to for that reference.
And then if you do that, you could also include a note in your client details if you have that showing at the top to redirect and and remind your team or yourself to, hey, go check those notes that are up there.
Thank you.
Yeah,
That's
like
actually
a
very
really
helpful.
quick. Oh, yeah, great,
Yeah.
great.
Yeah,
Happy
that's
to hear.
very helpful. Just one quick question to follow up on that.
Yeah.
Is there a limit to how much you can put into that client info section, notes and client fields or anything like that?
We
Into
haven't found
the
one yet.
Yeah, the limit has not been found, at least. You may run into that at some point. We've been pretty expansive with those and haven't found it yet. So I can at least give you that piece. At that point, maybe if you do find that limit, maybe that's when you start a 2024 month end notes and then start a new document for each year or something like that. But
Yeah.
honestly, we haven't found that yet, at least.
Okay, thank you so much.
Good question.
Absolutely. Kate, I did see you also had kind of a tandem question, and Jody, I actually don't know the answer to this one. Do you know
Okay.
if there's a way to export the team comments on like a task or something like that? I know there's becoming more and more areas that we do see that export button. I just don't know if that has filtered over into comments yet.
I think the answer is that it has not.
Not yet. Okay.
Because I think it would have been there. Let me see if
That's
I
where
can
I would have
locate one
expected
that we've had some chatter on. So bear with me. Or we can answer another question and circle back.
That's actually the last question I have here in chat.
okay.
So if there's anybody else that has something they've been waiting on, feel free to pop it in. But in the meantime, we can go ahead and explore this with you.
Pretty sure the answer is no right now, but it's another really good feature request we could put out
Yeah,
there.
absolutely. I'll make sure that there is a feature request and that we send it out if there isn't one already.
While you're making that note, based on the other questions that we've had, I think a feature request where you have the option to pull that comment forward is a great one that we can throw out there to Keeper to see if that's something that they can add in. It would definitely add to the complexity of how the chat feature works. But it would be really cool if you did have a button there that you could just check off or toggle that says carry this forward with the task.
Or even if that worked like a pin, like pin this
Right.
comment and
Right.
allow it to move forward.
Yes.
I've also seen very similar, and it's at least similar enough that I'll add it to the feature request and send it out when we do the recording. But I've also seen teams where they actually want that attachment to move forward. So right
Yes,
now,
that's a big
similar to
one.
comments, inside of Keeper, the attachments don't move forward to that next iteration because they don't want the statements from last month cluttering up this month and that just becoming an absolute mess. But I think being able to pin that or to save it or pull it forward or something like that as well.
Mhm.
So I'll make sure that that's in and we send that out as well. That's some really creative. I love that.
Yes, that's good. So no, there's not an export button anywhere that I can see for the
This
chats
point.
yet. So we'll need to do that. You can copy the URL, but that's just going to bring you directly to this page, this task, this close, and open up the comment. So I don't think that would be as helpful. I think you're just going to have to do the good old fashioned, highlight, copy, paste to be able to export that. It'll have to be manually. What we're looking for, in case anybody is wondering and not familiar, we're looking for this button. This button right here, the export to CSV, and it has slowly popped up all throughout Keeper for reports, tasks, and that kind of thing. So anywhere that you see this little export button means that you can pull that information out.
Yeah. Thanks for adding some context there, Jody. Really appreciate it. Okay, so a question from Jesse. And this one's a little bit more creative. I know that we've had a couple of workarounds here in the past, Jody. So right now, Keeper only allows that one email address per firm. So Jesse's created an email specifically for this, but now they're having to monitor 2 email inboxes. So wanted to kind of explore that as far as what we've seen before, since you can only have one email attached as your practice email.
Okay, so we're talking, I'm just going to show everybody to provide that context. In your practice settings, client portal, branding, your practice email. You can only have one right now. I know that there's some big improvements to the email functionality coming. There's been chatter about that for a while. So there are improvements coming. I don't know exactly what they will be or what additional things are going to be opened up with that update, but I do know that things are coming. I have seen, like you said, people create one, but then you're right. You're going to be looking at
2 inboxes. So
2
here, I'll
inboxes. You
kind
can
of
set
bounce
up
off.
forwarding. You can set up auto
Yeah.
forwarding. That would be a key thing. That's the primary one that I think we've discussed before,
Yeah.
is that auto forwarding.
Yeah. So just to provide a little bit of context, we've explored can you create an alias that's still attached to this email, but it does need to be its own individual email. I don't know how to say it, non-alias, but it needs to be its own. So what we've seen other firms do in the past is create that second and then set up auto forwarding rules so that it auto forwards to your main inbox. And you can even set up labels so that anything that gets auto forwarded either gets sorted into its own like folder or has its own label from Keeper or something like that. So that's at least the kind of workaround that we've seen other firms use so that you're not having to check 2 email inboxes. But that's one that I would definitely keep an eye out for because there are improvements coming.
Yeah. And if you do have a team and you have specific people who address questions and emails from specific clients, then like Erica was saying, with labels and with auto forwarding and all that, you can set up rules within the email to auto forward. If it comes from this person, send it to this team member, and file it into this folder or this label. So there are ways to be able to set up those automations so that you don't have to monitor that additional inbox as closely.
Yeah, that's at least the best workaround that we have right now, Jesse.
Yeah.
So hopefully that helps. That seems like what you're doing right now. So that's at
Yeah.
least the common consensus. And I saw a couple other people echo that that's what they're doing in the chat as well. Great question. All right, so we've got another one here regarding tax. So let me actually pause for 2 seconds before we answer this one, just to give our brief little wrap up in case anybody does need to head out. So we do these every month. So we'll have another one next month with a different topic. Anybody who registered for this or previous Q&As, we'll send out the recording. So you'll have the recording and any resources or canny feature requests or anything like that that we talked about today. We do have a couple of other free resources here. So we have PDFs and things like that on tags and how to save your views in your task list and things like that on our resources page. And then if you want to binge any of these previous Q&As, we do have all of them on our YouTube channel, and they're listed by the deep dive topic. So if you wanted to go back and look at metrics or onboarding or stuff like that, there's at least a good place to go for there. So that's kind of all things free and helping you just understand Keeper. Jody, if you'll go to the next page, we also do offer support as well. So we are more than happy to do these and answer questions as they come up. But if you're needing more individualized team training, or if you want us to take a look at your Keeper account and help troubleshoot some issues or just see anything that you may be missing, we can always do diagnostic reviews. And then you saw our full working demo. So we do offer support in actually setting that up, whether that's templates and guiding you through it or doing the setup ourselves. So feel free to email us if you have more questions, or if you do want some amount of support to help you along Keeper and just shorten that learning curve, or explore a little free resources page to kind of get you started as well. So we'll stay on to answer any questions that are coming through and make sure we get to Jennifer's about tax. So if you have any lingering questions that you were hoping to get to, feel free to pop them in the chat. We always leave a little bit of buffer room. But if you do need to log off, we'll send you out the recording on Friday. And we're so excited you were able to join us today.
Yeah. For those that have to go, thank you so much for joining. For those who are staying, we'll pop back over to our demo.
Yep, absolutely. So popping into Jennifer's question about tax, where we left off, or actually,
Do we
Jennifer
have tax
had a
set up?
I don't in the demo.
Think. Yeah, I don't think I have one in the demo.
Question. Okay.
Okay.
So for anyone who does taxes, is there a process that someone has come up with to manage the tax process? Sounds like they
Yes.
have a tiny tax practice that doesn't need a whole other solution for taxes at this point in their lifespan.
So the short answer, yes, we have helped people to set up the entire thing from start to finish, with bringing on tax clients to filing. Typically, all of that is going to be housed in the non-closing task section. So we've seen where people have created a specific section just for tax. So those bookkeeping clients that don't also have tax, you can hide those so that they're not taking up space. And then from there, you could show a tax section when you need it. And you can build out the checklists, task lists as needed for that, which will, having that in here, you can do that as an unconnected client. Let me back up a little bit. So if you do have a tax client, and that's all that they are, they're not going to be connected to anything, you can have them as an unconnected client and utilize a non-closing task list. And you get that client portal so that you can exchange the information that you need to, pass back and forth documentation, all of that. So yes, we have seen it used and built out in that way. Erica, do you have anything to add or break down?
The biggest piece that I would just kind of keep in mind, that Keeper is not built for tax. There's a lot of workarounds that we can do to house tax. One of the biggest things that I've seen is there's no signatures through Keeper. Right. So if you're needing to do anything that needs that approval or that needs a signature, that's the biggest piece that I would just keep in the back of your head, because you're going to need either a hello sign or PandaDoc or something like that on that front. But that being said, we've seen a lot of people that either will create an unconnected client that's just for tax, and have, if there is like a client that does both, you do both sides for them. You can either have them all in that same client and just have a shown or visible tax section. That way it's all in the same. Or sometimes, depending on how your team is split up or your workload or how it works best for your brain, we've seen some people create two clients, one that's connected for bookkeeping and then one that is unconnected for that tax side, and you just hide any of the other sections that you don't need. So short answer is definitely recommend creating a tax section here inside of Keeper in the non-closing section. And then Jody, actually, let's go to settings to show where to do that and how to make sure it's hidden on all the clients, so you're not accidentally
Yes.
creating a tax section that's across all clients and it's just blank.
Okay. And I've got something to add on to that as well, because I know that with tax clients, there's a lot of dates you have to keep in tune with, like up to date with. You have a lot of specific details that you need for those clients. And sometimes you want to be able to see that at a glance. So we also recommend using those custom properties. Keep in mind, this is our demo account. It's a huge
There's way
sandbox
too
for us.
much
So
in
there's
here.
way too much in here. But you can use custom section or custom properties for taxes and be able to track some of those dates, to be able to track, you know, have I gotten the signature I need? Has this been filed? Is this delayed? Is there an extension? You can build that out here as well. And once it's in as a custom property, you can then set up saved views on your client list so that you can see all of your tax clients and all of the information. Happy to go into that in more detail at another time or in a one-on-one brainstorming session with those of you who are trying to set it up for tax. But that's another really good feature of Keeper that you can utilize to be able to gather all that information. All right, so we're going to jump into practice settings. And
Okay, I
here
do see your
under
hand
practice and
raised, so give us
statements.
just a second to show where
Yeah.
that section lives and how to create it, and then I'll pop over to you next.
Yeah. So section manager is here. This is also where you can turn on to show those client details that you've seen on our pages. You can add a non-closing section here. Now, by default, it will be hidden. If this is something that you want to be shown across all clients, you need to check this box. If you check that box, then every new client, it'll always be visible. And that's not something that you can then turn off later, at least as of right now. So you can just add in your section here. And then if you ever need to rearrange, you can also do that here as well. And those custom properties that I just mentioned are going to be under your all client settings right here under properties. And this is where you can build out anything that you need for those extra details.
Yep, so
Okay.
if you wanted to put a checkbox for anybody that does have tax so that you could filter that list and just show tax clients, or if you wanted to keep track of the dates or whether you're doing sales or property tax or anything like that, this would be where you would add the property. And then for the clients, either on this page if you're doing them in bulk, or inside of that client on the info card, that's where you can fill in the specifics for that client individually. All right, Kate, I saw your hand raised a second ago. Do you have something to add to the conversation? I know you're using tax, so feel free to add some context here.
Yeah, I am. So I do use that that property for tax, and so to manage the close section, I learned it from you guys here about using those custom custom on those non-closing closings. I'm actually trying to pull it up and remember myself. I created another property with the tax filing progress, where then I can put a status. So, or custom statuses, that's what I was trying to say. So I created then a custom status where then on my saved view, I hide the close for my tax view. And I show the tax filing status.
Yeah,
that's amazing. I love that. So that means that you could just show the clients that have tax. You could show any other info, and then you have a status that's separated from the closed status, right? So you could still have your bookkeeping all together if you needed to, or you can hide all of that bookkeeping stuff and just show a specific tax view. Love that, Kate.
Yeah.
We don't have the sample for tax, but this is our sample for payroll. And I think this has those. So it's kind of similar with that payroll status. Let me add that in there. So it's a separate you don't have any of the closing information here. This is all just about payroll, which is the same thing that you can do for your tax or any offering that you have.
Any service
where you
line
need
that
this
you
kind of-
have
Yes.
specifically like this? We've seen some people who are doing HR or other sales tax filings or anything like that. So second call or third column, you can see that we have a checkbox for anybody that does have that service line. And then we just actually filtered by only those ones, right? Don't show me any of the other bookkeeping. Don't show me any of the other stuff. I just want to see anybody that does have that checkbox. And then you can get really creative with who the team member that's doing payroll or taxes, or the system or frequency, or that status that Kate was talking about. You can get really, really creative with this area so that you can have essentially like a dashboard for the tax side of things. And this is definitely one of those rabbit holes that
Oh, yes.
we could talk about all day. So if you have more specific questions around tax, or if we didn't quite get to it, or there's other pieces that you have within your firm that you're trying to get creative about, feel free to reach out to us. We do brainstorming sessions all the time where we can understand what's going on specifically for you, and then pop in our demos so we don't mess up your account, and play around and see what we need to show on that view, or how to get exactly what you want to. So this is hopefully at least a crack and open that can of worms, but let us know if we need to explore any further. Alrighty, well, before we get too far too fast, because obviously this is the system that we love so much, so we could talk way too long about it, we'll go ahead and give everybody back their Wednesday, and we'll call it here. Again, feel free to email us or visit those resources pages if you want to continue to dive into Keeper and learn more about it. And then otherwise, thank you again for spending part of your Wednesday with us. We'll send out the recording on Friday, and hopefully we'll see you next time.
Bye, everyone.